Essentially, what we're talking about when we talk about leadership, as far as I'm concerned, I have been studying leadership for 15 years. I've been researching it, reading about it, I've been teaching it for a long time. And really, if you boil all of the leadership concepts down into a small pot and you pull out the things that are really important, really two concepts that come to mind: product and process. Okay? And so you could read all the theories about leadership that you want, you could read all the books, you could do all the research like I have, but at the end of the day, no matter what situation you're in, there are going to be two basic contexts in which you are going to take in order to approach a certain problem. Now, why is this important for students on co-op? Well, I imagine a lot of the jobs that you're going to be having are not going to be really leadership heavy. They're really going to be mostly, here's a project, please do this, and you're part of a team. So you get a great opportunity to observe leadership happening around you, which is fantastic. 80% of the time when you graduate and get a job, or even while you're on co-op, 80% of the time you're going to be in a follower role, right? That's the person who's not necessarily in charge of whatever's happening, but sometimes you'll have an opportunity to step into a leadership role. Most of the time, the roles are really not so much leadership as they are just management, right? Some sort of authority has been given to you to direct whatever project, program, or person that has been presented to you. And so, when we talk about leadership, we're talking about, again, two things: product and process. Now, product's the easy one. This is the one we see all the time. Product is really focused more on the outcome. And so oftentimes you'll hear this referred to as outcome-based leadership or outcome-based management, product-based leadership, all those types of things. What we're really focused on is getting from point A to point B, right? And so if you're in charge of a project team, your goal is to get the project done, right? And so these are generally not hard issues for you to figure out. These are things that have been presented to you. You're responsible for creating a product, and they've asked you to use a team to create that product. You assign different pieces, you delegate tasks, right? Different pieces to different people, and everyone kind of has a piece of the whole. But your job is kind of see the whole thing, right? So everyone has their small pieces. When you're on co-op, you'll probably be one of those people who has a small piece, and oftentimes you'll wonder, how does my small piece fit into the bigger whole? Well, hopefully there's somebody, maybe your supervisor, maybe your supervisor's supervisor, who understands the big picture, right? And so in product or outcome-oriented leadership, you can see a lot of hierarchy happening, right? And this is the typical model that we see all the time, right? It can be really complex, and it's mostly for big organizations, they use this kind of model. And it can be really straightforward. This person supervises this person, who supervises these two people, or sometimes it can be these two people are supervised together, and they supervise this person together, and it can get sometimes a little bit complex. Right? And that's generally a hierarchical sort of model, right? It's really, really easy, it's pretty straightforward. What's really important about this model is that we refer to it as transactional. And that's generally your approach to leadership. Your approach to leadership in this part is transactional. It's a transaction between wants and needs of two different parties. And so you're the supervisor or the boss, and the person that's working for you, you have a need for them to do something, and it's a transaction. If you do X for me, I'll pay you money. Right? That's a job sort of environment. Or a politician. If you vote for me, I'll make sure that I pass this bill through, right? It's a transaction of wants and needs. And so most of the time, what we're doing when we're talking about leadership is really this, transaction stuff. And so a lot of scholars would say that that's not necessarily leadership, as it is just really good management. And if you're good at it, then this works really, really well. And so it's very managerial. And the focus here is on these people, right? The managers, overseeing different parts of the product. And the most important concept in this whole model is control. Who has it, right? And if you're the person at the very bottom, you have the least amount of control. You're being told what to do, and when you do it, you get a salary or whatever that might be. Or if you're part of a product, a program that's going on, or you're doing something volunteer in the neighborhood or something like that, but you're just a member of that team or Habitat community, whatever, you're responsible for putting up that piece of the wall. It's still very much oriented. We're trying to put up a house, and your part is very small. But in this model, control is the most important part. Now, completely flip that around, and we have leadership that's process-oriented. All right? And the goal here in process-oriented leadership, different than product-oriented leadership, is that the most important component is that there is some sort of change. All right? What happens in these types of scenarios is that the information that has been provided to you isn't adequate enough to solve the problem. All right? And so when you are being put on a team, or you're being put in charge of a team, if the end goal isn't so much as important as it is the process that you're going through, that's process-oriented leadership. In other words, we don't necessarily know what the end goal is going to look like. Right? The company has come to us and says, you need to solve this problem for us. We don't know how to do this well. All right? And the end goal has not necessarily been mapped out for you, and so you need new information. And generally speaking, the people that are around you maybe don't have the answers to that. And that's where it gets really complex. And this sort of process looks much more organic. And so we call it a systems approach. If you're familiar with ecology, it's more of an ecology system approach. And what's important here is not the transaction between people, but the transformation from one thing to the next. And that's why we call it transforming or transformational leadership. It's not about the end product, because that's immaterial. What's important is the process, how we get there. And what's in the middle in this hierarchy, or this rather not hierarchy, this system, maybe isn't always a person so much as the idea or the purpose. That's what's in the middle, and the people revolve around that. And what's really important in these types of systems are not exactly the people themselves, but the relationships. So not the people, but the relationships between the people. And so we refer to it as relational leadership. And what's most important in a system like this over here is control. Over here, the most important piece is collaboration. Because without it, we can't do anything. Okay? Because I can't solve all of the problems myself, by myself. I need other people. Whereas in a product-oriented environment, I can solve most of the problems by myself. Someone comes to me and says, hey, the widget that you're creating, that your team is doing over and over and over again, is great, but it's not meeting all of our needs. We'd like it to do this as well. And I say, oh, I know how to do that. I switch up my product model, and then I send out the specs to my team who creates it, and now we have new widgets that do the new thing. It's very simple. But if someone comes and says, the widget that you've created is no good at all. In fact, we needed to do something completely different, and we need you to revamp everything that you've done. The team and myself may not have all the information that we need in order to do that. So it requires knowledge, information, research in order to create that change. And so we need relationships between people, talking all the time. Now, this model isn't always good, and any company that says this is how we operate 24/7 would be bad. Because at some point you're going to need some sort of process or some sort of product to produce, right? And you're going to need hierarchy, right? You're going to need structure. But a lot of startups will start out this way. A lot of small companies are this way because they're not really sure what they're doing yet. I know they want to do something and something big and something important, but this is more adaptive to that environment. We're able to be much more flexible, whereas this model is not adaptive. It's very straightforward. All right? And so the difference between these two, and this is you in the middle, the difference between these two is understanding the context. Knowing when to use which one. And so the easiest way is knowing when to use which one. Can I solve the problem by myself? If I can't, and I need more information, then perhaps I need a different approach to this leadership paradigm. Right? We talked a few weeks ago about paradigms, shifting paradigms. These are paradigms. One way works for certain situations, and another way works better for other situations. Make sense? And so when you're out on co-op, and when you're doing the different things that you need to do, you're going to ask yourself, what is the purpose behind what I'm doing? Right? And so oftentimes when I give these talks with students talking about leadership development, I ask them, what is the purpose of leadership? Why do it in the first place? Why put your neck out there? Why risk any sort of personal social capital, right? Why all that time and energy? Why doing it, right? And if the answer is because it's the right thing to do, or passion for something, or this is where we need to be going in the world, then that might be that process-oriented sort of leadership style. And that might be where you might need to go. And so oftentimes when we talk about our leaders, people who are responsible for the things that we're doing, we use really positive associations with them, right? Passionate people, people who are honest, who communicate well, right? People who are helpful and transparent. But the most important thing that comes up when we survey thousands and thousands of people about the leaders that are in their lives is honesty. Always number one. People want their leaders to be honest. They want them to be able to tell them why the decisions that they're making are being made. How often do you like to be in an organization where decisions are always being made by someone and you never have any input? Not a lot of fun. But if it's something you do routinely every day, it's really not that big a deal. If someone changes the process, it's really not that big a deal because it's the same thing every day. But if someone comes in and makes a complete sweeping change about what you're doing, it doesn't impact, it doesn't talk to you about that at all, but it impacts you greatly, generally people resist that kind of change. And that's why the command and control version, when you're trying to create positive change, something good in the world or good for your organization, if done this way, people will resist at the bottom. That's when you start to see uprisings, strikes, boycotts, whatever those things might be. Organizations, people might quit, right? They might do walkouts, things like that. But if change is done in this formation, with the process in mind, inclusion of people in that process, you're going to be much more successful. But again, you can't do that all the time. And so knowing the difference between the two is important. So knowing why lead is super important. So, how do I define leadership? This is an important concept. There are over 1,000 published definitions of the word leadership. Realistically speaking, there's probably one leadership definition for every person who's ever tried to define it for themselves. And so I have a personal leadership definition. This is it. This is how I feel that leadership should be thought of. It's collaborative, it's relational. It's about people involved working together. And it's a process. It's not a thing. It's not authority. It's not taking command and control. Leadership is about creating change, positive change, getting people to work together, right? It's about the process of getting there as opposed to the end goal in mind. Now, I can sit and influence people all day long and tell them what to do, and if I have authority over them, it's very easy to do that. But when you have no authority over anyone, doing that is very hard. And so, again, that inclusive piece, that relational, collaborative piece is what gets people to do the things that you want them to do. And so when you're working on a team, and there isn't a single person who's got any authority over anyone else, using that process-oriented model is going to be most important. The person in this sort of exchange, the leader themselves, I have a definition of that too. And this is what I want to talk about today. Now, I'm not saying that these 6 qualities which I'm about to discuss with you are the only ones that exist. There are certainly going to be many, many more. It's certainly not an exhaustive list. But these, in my opinion, are the top 6 that you need to pay attention to in order to be an effective leader of people around you, creating that change. And so, the first one is self-awareness. Transformational leaders have the ability to be self-aware. And so, to help me illustrate my point, I decided to throw in a few movie clips.
Take care of Ron. Then go to the owlery. Send a message to Dumbledore. Ron's right. I have to go on.
You'll be okay, Harry. You're a great wizard. You really are.
Not as good as you.
Me, books and cleverness. There are more important things. Friendship and bravery. And Harry, just be careful.
So the first thing you need to understand about leadership, transformational leadership, or whatever that might be, is your understanding what your own values are and how your own values and characteristics and strengths that you bring to the table, how that impact others around you. And so what's really important to you? Is family really important to you? Is bravery really important to you? Is, being good at chess really important to you? Whatever those things might be, that will impact how you make decisions. right? When we make decisions based on our values, we are living in congruence with those decisions. When we make decisions that are against our values, two things are happening. One, we have a disconnect between what our values really are. So we say one thing, but we do another, right? And then the other thing that happens is because of this disconnect, we are unable to authentically lead others because they see through that, right? When you say I believe in one thing, if a company says they really value customer service, but they don't care about their customers, in fact, they routinely blow them off or have terrible phone systems when you call in and ask questions and things like that, they're not living in that congruence, and people see through that and they'll decide to choose a different company to work for. And so understanding who you are, your values, your self-awareness, that piece is super critical. So effective leaders know this. They know that the values that they have play an important aspect of how they lead others. Make sense? All right. Transformational leaders strive to do good. Now, I'm not always saying that good is social good, like solving world hunger, right? Or, taking care of poverty, those things, although those are important, I'd love you to do those things as well. But positive good, common good, decisions that you make aren't necessarily about you, they're about the collective whole.
This report is maybe 12 years old. Parliament buried it, and it stayed buried until River dug it up. This is what they feared she knew. And they were right to fear. Because there's a whole universe of folk who are going to know it too. They're going to see it. Somebody has to speak for these people. Y'all got on this boat for different reasons, but y'all come to the same place. So now I'm asking more of you than I have before. Maybe all. As sure as I know anything, I know this. They will try again. Maybe on another world, maybe on this very ground swept clean. A year from now, 10, they'll swing back to the belief that they can make people better. And I do not hold to that. So no more running. I aim to misbehave.
So Malcolm Meadows' main character, Nathan Fillion, amazing actor, is talking about speaking for the people who cannot speak for themselves. Oftentimes, when we make decisions about things that we're doing, we don't always think about the ramifications of said decisions. Sometimes we're in a position where we don't even know what those ramifications might be. But information comes to us that maybe leads us to believe that the decisions that we're making as part of a greater collective may impact people negatively. And that's what I'm talking about when I'm talking about common good. And those people could be people living in a distant country that have you don't know at all, or they could just be constituents that are involved in your organization, people in another team of your organization. It could be any of those scenarios. And so understanding how our decisions impact others is very, very important. All right? Those decisions need to be made ethically, with considerations of all people. Third, transformational leaders have a vision for a better future. This is probably the easiest one to understand. That if you're going to be an effective leader, a transformational leader, someone who's going to create great positive change in the world or in your organization, and you're going to be a real big impact to the company that you work for, that person needs to have a vision for a better future. That person needs to be able to see a way forward that other people might not see.
Master! I have... It's very bad news.
Shifu. There is just news. There is no good or bad.
Master, your vision was right. Tai Lung has broken out of prison. He's on his way.
That is bad news. If you do not believe that the Dragon Warrior can stop him.
The panda? Master, that panda is not the Dragon Warrior. He wasn't even meant to be here. It was an accident.
There are no accidents.
Yes, I know. You've said that already. Twice.
Well, that was no accident either.
Thrice.
My old friend, the panda will never fulfill his destiny, nor you yours. until you let go of the illusion of control.
Illusion?
Yes. Look at this tree, Sifu. I cannot make it blossom when it suits me, nor make it bear fruit before its time.
But there are things we can't control. I can control when the fruit will fall. And I can control where to plant the seed. Hiya! That is no illusion, Master.
Ah, yes. But no matter what you do, that seed will grow to be a peach tree. You may wish for an apple or an orange, but you will get a peach.
But a peach cannot defeat Tai Lung.
Maybe it can, if you are willing to guide it, to nurture it, to believe in it.
But how? How? I need your help, Master.
No, you just need to believe. Promise me, Shifu. Promise me you will believe.
I will try.
Good.
So, having a vision for a better future, having a vision for any future that is different than the one that we currently have, is challenging. It's not easy to do, and sometimes that comes easier to other people than most. But it is a skill, is a quality that, if adopted and utilized and worked on, can contribute to a greater understanding of where we should be going in our organization, in life, whatever that might be. But the important thing is that illusion of control. No matter where you think we should be going, you can't control all of the pieces. And that's why a full inclusion of everyone as much as possible, as much as will be allowed by the circumstances with what you are presented with, is an important aspect. Okay? All right, next is transformational leaders have a global worldview, right? They see those connections between different cultures, different people, different circumstances, and how they interplay with what you're doing.
Vader was seduced by the dark side of the Force.
The Force?
And the Force is what gives the Jedi his power. It's an energy field created by all living things. It surrounds us and penetrates us. It binds the galaxy together.
Essentially, what we're talking about is when decisions are being made, when processes are being worked on, understanding how culture affects what you're doing is very important. And so if you're, let me give you a good example. I have students who work at corporations right here in Cincinnati that have holdings all over the world. And oftentimes, my students, our students here, are asked to work on a team with people from different countries. Now, sometimes those people from different countries are right here in Cincinnati, and that's easy. Sometimes, because of the way technology has enhanced our lives, teams no longer have to be bound by bricks and mortar. Teams are all over the world, and we meet virtually all the time. Being able to understand how to communicate to people in any context, in any situation, is integral to being successful as a leader, any kind of leader, let alone a transformational leader. Being able to have an awareness, an understanding of how different cultures interact with ours, interact with the processes that you're working on, how you interact with those individuals is really important. The assumptions that we make about people in other countries, their intelligence levels, their experiences, what their lives must be like. Those are all assumptions that we made without generally a lot of knowledge about who they are as people, right? And so having that awareness that I don't know everything about the world and I'm eager to learn more is really important. And so having that ability is critical to being a successful leader because you don't really know who are the people that are on your team that you're going to be leading. And so understanding all of those pieces and how they connect to each other is going to be really important as we move forward, especially as technology becomes ever more enhanced in our lives. Almost last, this is fifth. Transformation leaders are able to inspire others to have commitment to their organization, their cause, through their personal investment, right? So theirs and yours. So you're able to coordinate that experience effectively.
Hey. Don't ever let somebody tell you you can't do something. Not even me. All right?
All right.
You got a dream, you got to protect it. People can't do something themselves. They want to tell you you can't do it. You want something, go get it. Period. Let's go.
Dad.
In order to effectively lead others, you have to understand what your personal passions are. Why are you doing what you're doing? If you're going to spend all this energy, all this time, all this social capital and personal capital and investing in whatever you're creating, and you want people to come along with you, you're going to have to demonstrate to them that dream, that aspiration, right? You're going to have to show them your passion for what you're doing, because if you don't have that, why would I want to follow you? Why would I want to listen to anything you're saying? And so showing that dream, that aspiration is really, really critical, because your personal investment in what you're doing will create commitment on their part. People are more likely to commit to you if they know that you're personally and thoroughly invested in what you're doing and in them. Right? And then lastly, transformational leaders inspire others. Being inspirational, both yourself and through other people.
Tell me, Francois, what is your philosophy on leadership? How do you inspire your team to do their best?
By example. I've always thought to lead by example, sir.
Well, that is right. That is exactly right. But how to get them to be better than they think they can be? That is very difficult, I find. Inspiration, perhaps. How do we inspire ourselves to greatness when nothing less will do? How do we inspire everyone around us? I sometimes think it is by using the work of others. On Robben Island, when things got very bad, I found inspiration in a poem.
A poem?
A Victorian poem. Just words, but they helped me to stand when all I wanted to do was to lie down. But you didn't come all this way to hear an old man talk about things that make no sense.
No, please, Mr. President. It makes complete sense to me. On the day of a big match, say a test, in the bus on the way to the stadium, nobody talks.
Ah, yes. They're all preparing.
Right. But when I think we're ready, I have the bus driver put on a song. Something I've chosen, one we all know. And we listen to the words together. And it helps.
I remember when I was invited to the 1992 Olympics in Barcelona. Everybody in the stadium greeted me with a song. At the time, the future, our future, seemed very bleak. But to hear that song in the voices of people from all over our planet made me proud to be South African. It inspired me to come home and do better. It allowed me to expect more of myself.
May I ask, what was the song, sir?
Well, it was in Posisikilele, Africa. A very inspiring song. We need inspiration, Francois. Because in order to build our nation, we must all exceed our own expectations.
In order to get people's full and willingness cooperation with what you're doing, being transparent, being communicative, being honest, Those are all really important. But inspiring others to exceed their own expectations, to be better than they think they can be, for you to be doing more with what you have, that is true leadership. That is transformational leadership. And that's the kind of stuff that's going to get you and your group and your organization or whatever you're doing to accomplish things that you might think are impossible. And that's the difference between process and product. To be a product manager, you don't really need to be inspirational. You don't really need to inspire people to do better than they can, right? But to do something that no one else has done before, to really truly impact and create change and make a difference in whatever organization or culture or society that you're working with, inspiring others to be better. That